Hey everyone, I hope that you're really well. So for today's YouTube video, I'm filming a dark academia book recommendations list. So I'm going to be telling you about the dark academia type books that I've read this year, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion about whether or not they're worth the hype, my opinions on them, and just overall my dark academia recommendations. These are the books that I read outside my university studies. I have 5 of them that I'm going to be listing today, and they all fall under dark academia theme because they're dark, and then 3 of them are classics, and then 2 of them are about like history and academia, so that's why they kind of fall under the bracket. If you have any recommendations for dark academia style books, leave them in the comments below and give us a thumbs up if this is the kind of video that you like, and subscribe down below if you're new here. But without further ado, let's get on with the books. The first book that I read this year was Inferno by Dan Brown. It's one of his Robert Longdon stories, so it's about the main protagonist, Robert Longdon, trying to crack a mystery in 24 hours. This particular story, if you're sensitive about the issues that are happening in the world right now with the pandemic, maybe don't pick this one up, but this is about Robert Longdon trying to prevent a virus outbreak across the whole of the world. He is a history professor. That's kind of how it falls into the dark academia theme, and also given that the topic is very dark. My opinions on this book is that I really enjoyed it when I read it. I thought that it was incredibly well written, incredibly well researched. The story is full of twists and turns, and what I like about Dan Brown's books is when he gives you that shock factor, like those moments where the plot really twists. If I was going to give this a star rating, I want to give it a 5, especially because of how hard it must have been to have written a book like this. This is actually from, I believe that this was written in 2013. It really couldn't be more relevant, and I would just highly recommend reading it if you're into a crime kind of mystery. If you're sensitive on the topic, as I said before, maybe give this one a miss, but overall I really would give this a 5 stars. I liked Inferno so much, the second book that I decided to read of the year was Origin by Dan Brown. So this book is similar to Inferno, and given the fact that it is written in that 24-hour mystery solving Robert Longdon narrative style, but this story is about Robert Longdon trying to save the information of where we came from and where we're going from a scientist who is going to release that information at the start of the story. It is a very well written book. Dan Brown and his team researched these themes so well, and not everyone could write a book like this. As you can see, it has many pages in. It's full of great facts and figures. One thing that Dan Brown does is that he takes you on an exploration of the whole world through his stories. Overall, I preferred Inferno to Origin because Inferno had a lot more twists, and it was just a theme that I found so fascinating, especially given the time now, even though that wasn't particularly happening when I read that story. Whereas Origin, as soon as I knew that the theme of the story was where do we come from, where are we going, I just wanted him to answer the question, so I got quite impatient. And then in the end I was like, this is anticlimactic, just give me the information. So overall I would probably give this one a 3.5 stars, but it is still a very well written book, and I do recommend if you want a nice, easy, informative, interesting read. The dark academia book that I read this year was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I had intended to read this book so many times before, and I had never been in the right mind frame for it. I definitely think that this is a very dark academia type book, given that it's like Victorian literature. It has a very dark theme. I think that if you look at dark academia like social pages, there will definitely be something Frankenstein related on those pages. So the story of Frankenstein, I haven't seen the films, and apparently films are very different to the book, but the story, without spoiling anything, is that a man called Frankenstein decides to create a human, Frankenstein's monster. And then when he makes this human slash monster, he's so like horrified by it that he abandons it. It's kind of, if you've ever heard of the story of Carrie, which I haven't read because I thought it sounded too sad, but it's kind of the theme of misjudging people, and then when you treat someone badly, then they can have negative consequences and that person can retaliate. That's kind of the theme of Frankenstein. So people in the story are not nice to Frankenstein's monster, and then therefore Frankenstein's monster retaliates. That's kind of what happens in the book, but there's a lot more to it than just that, because that's kind of the start of the story, and then from there it's like where the rest of the story goes. This was a little bit of a slog for me, I'm not gonna lie, because I tried to read it multiple times. The narrative style is storytelling through like letters. It's kind of like a really long Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I liked Rime of the Ancient Mariner, but the way that I said that didn't make it sound positive, did it? Overall, I would probably give this a 3.5 stars, mainly because, okay, I think that books like this have really altered literature. I think that Mary Shelley is phenomenal. The fact that she wrote this when she was so young, the fact that this was written so long ago and it's still so current, I think it is an incredible book. However, because it is quite, not necessarily verbose, but it is quite long-winded, and therefore I was a bit like, at points I was like, just get to the story. But she is very descriptive. If you're in the mood for some descriptive dark academia vibes, this is probably the book for you. You won't necessarily want to like blast through it. It might be a book that you have to pick up and put back down until you're in the right mood again, but it is an excellent book. Even though I gave it 3.5, I hope that isn't too harsh because it is excellent, but when I was reading it I was just like a bit over it at points. The fourth book that I chose to read, which I hope you will agree can be classified as dark academia because it is a classic, is The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. I don't know if you've read The Jungle Book before. If you haven't, or if you haven't seen a version of it like this, I think this is a Folio Society one. It is a really, really beautiful book. It's full of jungle and other animal stories. The first half of the book, I would say, is Mowgli's story, which is the story that you'll be familiar with, and that was a really incredible read. I really enjoyed reading that. Some of the other animal stories were peculiar, to say the least, so some of them I wasn't so keen on, but some of them were, like especially Mowgli's, probably because I am so familiar with it, were just such excellent books. So Mowgli's story is obviously about a boy slash man cub who is raised in the jungle, and then a tiger kind of wants to kill him, and it's kind of about him standing up for himself. All the stories, all these animal stories, are about the animals or people taking a stand for themselves, so it had like a really nice message throughout it. I think I would give it a 4 stars, maybe 4.5. I feel like I'm being too harsh. They're all excellent books, but I'd give it 4 stars because Mowgli's story in particular I found so good. It was just so fun to read. It had so much description that I loved reading. Some of the other stories were a bit odd or violent, and that's kind of why I would knock it down a bit, because when I was reading them I was like, but that's kind of the dark academia thing, isn't it? They're kind of dark, so that's why I'm including it. But overall, definitely worth picking up. Final book that I chose to read was Dracula by Bram Stoker. So the story of Dracula is kind of similar to Frankenstein, wherein it is told in a storytelling narrative, as the story is just full of different diary entries from all the main characters. The story starts when a guy goes to Dracula's castle, because Dracula wants to move from his castle in somewhere in Europe, I think it's somewhere past Germany, to London. From there, we get this whole story of Dracula kind of coming to England and then disrupting the lives of the main protagonists without them really knowing who is doing this. My overall opinions of this book is that it was so well written. It was gripping. It was, for an older story, like, it really has that kind of horror value that I didn't expect from a like Victorian book, because I hadn't read a Victorian book before that really gave me that kind of shock factor, but this one really did. There's still things from this book that when I think about it I kind of go, ooh, that's how good this book was. That's how good this book was. Overall, I think I would give this a 4.5 stars. It definitely fits in the dark academia theme, but just in general, it was such a good story. It was very well written, especially the first half. When I was reading the first half, I was so into it and I really enjoyed it. At the end a bit, last 60 pages, I was like, get to it. But that was maybe just me being a bit impatient. This is just like an iconic book that has changed literature and film culture and stuff, so for that reason it really should get a 5, but like I'm gonna give it 4.5. So those were the dark academia style books that I read this year outside my studies just for fun. I hope that you liked my short, very vague, no spoiler summaries of them and my kind of opinions on them. If you want any like in-depth opinions of them, please leave a comment down below, or like get in touch on my other socials, which I'll link on the screen and down in the description box, because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who doesn't want any spoilers. I think out of all these books, if I was going to recommend someone like a book that is like wow and kind of dark and under this kind of bracket of books, I would say Inferno was my favourite. And then probably Dracula was also incredible, and so was The Jungle Book. So basically all of these books were really, really good. If you have a favourite, if you've read any of these, list them down below and what you thought of them as well. List any recommendations down below, give this a like if this is the kind of content that you like, and subscribe if you're new here. And yeah, I'll put all my social handles in the description box too. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I can't wait to see you in my next one very, very soon. Bye!